how would I make a visual? All right, 1 through, let's say 1 through 3. This is just an example. 1 through 3 encompasses the entire ideological view of the terrorist organization, right? So we'll say this is so it's one, and actually I'll just put 1, 2, 3, right? So each member must believe, remember, the power is localized at the top. Each member must believe, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4? What? Who's this guy? You stand out. That's not like that Sesame Street song, right? One of these things are not like the other. Tell us, can you guess which one? Can you guess which kid is doing his own thing? Guess before my song is done. Dun, dun, dun. And now my song is done. See, I can sing because nobody's going to watch this anyway. So, he's not falling in line, right? He believes what everybody else believes. But there's been an augmentation in his belief, just slightly. Terrorist organizations cannot tolerate, in any sense, any augmentation of the original ideology. If you waver at all, then you are target for extermination. Right? Exclusionary ideology, you do what the ideology says, you govern yourself as the ideology says. If you have any view that's in any bit different than the espoused ideology, off with your head, right? That becomes the problem. So, if you want to exploit that, what you do is you want to embolden supporters to sort of augment their view, right? Because, oh, well, yeah, he might be right. Okay, didn't he say 4? Okay, well, man, 4 might be right? So it's off with his head, right? Oh, well, he said 4. What about 4? 4's right, off with his head. And, he told me about 4, and then what about 4? Off with his head. We said 1, 2, 3, not 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Obviously, what ends up happening is the ideology sort of lessens. It's like crabs in a bucket. They end up killing themselves off. Like that's sort of the idea. Now, I have to, I'm a lecturer, so I gotta be sort of fair. The disadvantage that this has, right? The disadvantage that this has is that, so here's how you exploit it. But here's the disadvantage, which would be a benefit for the opposition, for the terrorist group. Disadvantage. The disadvantage is, if terrorist organizers recognize, if they recognize what's going on, if they recognize that people, that their constituency is challenging, not really even challenging, just transforming, just changing a little bit, right? It's the ideology says this, and I believe in the ideology. I believe that America is crap. I believe that democracy is the root of all evil in the world. I believe that capitalism is going to be the death of the human race and ... I believe all of this stuff. But I also believe this other one little bit. If that one little bit is not in the original ideology, terrorist community would be ridiculous to keep those members around, right? They're not going to keep those members around. You believe what I say. I think about myself, if I were in that position, I'm not going to have anybody challenge my authority, period. You do it the way I said it, or you're dead, period. End of discussion. No love lost, because there's 100 million people that can fill your spot. So I won't lose a wink of sleep killing this dude. I wouldn't even think about it, right? So that's advantageous for the good guys, if you will, right? Because they start killing themselves off. The disadvantage, however, is if terrorist organizers recognize this, they will strengthen their organization by killing any who waver, right? Which only suggests that the most fervent and loyal will remain, right? So these guys, they're going to be targeted. They have to, in a sense, terrorists need to clean up house and really challenge their operatives and really challenge their members to see how loyal they are ideologically, not how much they're willing to sacrifice physically. Anybody can do physical sacrifice. How much ideologically, proves to me ideologically that you believe what I believe. And if you can't, we're going to kill you off. So now the terrorist organization is smaller. It's much, much smaller. But this guy says, no, I believe what you believe. This is a serious dude right here. That's a serious dude. Because it took the death of 3 people. He's worth more to the organization than these 3. So this dude is die hard. He's all in, and that guy's he's gonna fight that war. He's gonna fight the battle to the hilt. And imagine, this is just one. Imagine that there's imagine that there's 2,000 of this guy. You think about the movie 300, right? What you were able to do when you had 300 dudes who were ideologically unwavering. 300 guys only, right? You got 2,000 guys like this. That's a big problem. That's a big problem, right? So the idea that terrorists need a whole bunch of people is ridiculous. They're going to recruit a whole bunch of people and probably kill a whole bunch of their own people to get to 2,000 guys like this, because these guys they're all in. They're serious about what they're doing. So it's a pro and a con, right? It's a pro and a con. All of this is going to be presented as pro and con. Here's the benefit to doing it. Here's the disadvantage of doing it, right? Because you need to know how to exploit it, but you need to know, insofar as it's exploited, here's how it might strengthen the opposition and so on. Okay, so again, with respect to this idea of exclusionary ideologies, which is uniquely my sort of contribution to the discourse, an exclusionary ideology requires total domination of information and competing narratives, right? If we have an exclusionary ideology, you have to have total, and this is not just for terrorism, this is for the concept of exclusionary ideology, which applies to terrorism, right? So all this stuff that I've been studying my whole life is like, oh wow, this really does apply to terrorism, right? Terrorism, since it's in a form and instantiation of exclusionary ideology, it requires total domination So in genocide scholarship, when you talk about the RTLM in Rwanda, and I'm not going to get into this, right, but the RTLM and the function that the RTLM played, brains and brawn, the brawn machetes are shipped in, hundreds of thousands of machetes. But the brains constructed, right, the professors, the intelligentsia, the academia, the scientists justified it because they used their intellectual ability to manipulate the masses, right? And they used their intellect, among other things, to control the population so that the population believed that what they were doing was right. And when they get the call to kill the cockroaches, that's the green light to go start killing. But it was that information was dominated. There was no opposing view on, the internet. There was no opposing view on television. There was no opposing view in the radio, right? There has to be a complete domination of information. The greatest mechanism of weakening global terrorism is information. Information. Pump it out, 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 pump, pump, pump. Keep pushing the information out. Information is the greatest source for the liberation of human impoverishment and human impoverishment and just human impoverishment that exists. So, with respect to the domination of information, what you'll see is, and this is happening, terrorists, real hardcore terrorist members and terrorist cells, and granted, I'm not in a terrorist organization, nor am I in the government. I don't know what the hell the government's doing, I don't know what the intelligence community is doing, I don't know what terrorists are doing. All of this is speculative, but I'm pretty good at what I do. So it's the idea that if we dominate the information, if we indoctrinate the community and we tell them that this is how democracy is, not just this is how the Americans are, right? We recognize it's not just about fighting a war against America. They're actually going to waste their time if they keep on expending all their war resources fighting the U.S. They're probably going to target non-U.S. democracies, easier targets. If we're fighting a democracy, this is the bad guy. This is what we need to do. I can't allow the people that I'm indoctrinating to hear an alternative perspective, because insofar as they hear an alternative perspective, then that perspective lies outside of my dogmatic justification. So it's recruits, if you will, and it's the potential member, right? And here is alternate